Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The ring box clicked shut on my finger. He yanked his hand back like he touched fire. Keys bit into his fist where I tried to hold him. Not here, his breath hitched as a door opened down the hall. Open it, I said, because running felt worse than staying. I am Mara, 29. I kept my palm out like proof I meant it. The box trembled between us, heavy as a dare. 7 years, I said, steady now. Say yes or give it back. He stared hard and didn't blink. His thumb pressed something on his phone. A tab flashed up with government banners. He angled the screen like a blade under light. You think I'm your visa ride? That's what you came to say. I swallowed the heat and waited for air. You rehearsed that while I planned dinner. My voice stayed level because fury would break me. Is that really what you believe? He shoved a second screen into my face. Search terms stacked like charges read in court. Fiancé route, permanent status, marriage evidence list. His jaw worked as if chewing glass. Why are you studying this if it's love? I study everything. I can't risk misreading. I slid the ring into my pocket for safety. My hands were visible the whole time. You could have asked first. Or do questions look like traps to you? He paced once, then locked the deadbolt. The click bounced between us like a warning shot. He kept the phone up like a badge. Tell me the date you plan to file. My stomach tightened because there was a real date. Next month if we agreed, not if we didn't. I forced my shoulders loose and counted 3 beats. I booked a consultation to understand process. Not to recruit you like a mule. I watched his eyes to see what landed. He crossed to the counter and pulled a folder. A crisp business card slid onto the surface. Immigration attorney, he muttered without looking at me. I met him this morning. He warned me about stories like yours. I laughed once because the sound hurt less. You booked a lawyer before you answered my question. My finger tapped the locked bolt, then stopped. Were you ever going to tell me? His silence felt heavier than the door. Open your drafts, he said without blinking. I unlocked my phone with a shaky thumb. My email held a folder named Planning. Inside waited questions about proof of life. See, he whispered like a referee with a foul. I scrolled for air and found notes. Rent agreements, travel logs, shared accounts. The words were mine and ugly in this light. I wrote those to avoid mistakes, not to script you. He flinched like the word script cut deep. You never asked if I wanted marriage now. His voice flattened to something practiced and cold. You built steps around me and called them love. He touched the card again as if for courage. I won't be marched anywhere. I won't march you. I set my phone down face up. No forms without both of us. I put the ring beside it like a truce. Pick truth over fear and I'll wait. He drew a breath and didn't release it. Take your things for tonight, he said at last. Sleep somewhere else while I think. He unlocked the door but didn't move aside. Don't text your plan to trap me. I zipped my jacket slowly to buy seconds. You're accusing me while gripping that door like a guard. He looked at his knuckles and loosened them. Neighbors passed with grocery bags and quick glances. Do you want me gone or honest? I want proof you aren't using me. He kicked the card under the folder like it burned. Not with speeches, with choices that cost you. Then maybe I can breathe around you again. His throat jumped like he hated the ask. I picked up the ring and weighed it. It costs me to leave now. I tucked it back in the box very slowly. I'll book my own path and show you the receipt. His eyes followed the box like it might explode. Tonight, he said, a dare with teeth. Start whatever solo route you claim exists. Don't hang it over us like charity. Do it because you can stand alone. I nodded once because anything else sounded weak. My shoes hit the hallway with clean echoes. I kept my jaw locked so words would not bleed out. At the elevator, I turned and lifted the box. Last chance to talk like partners, I said. The doors slid closed while he stared through me. I hit the sidewalk and dialed HR Direct. Urgent sponsorship, consult tonight, my voice held. I cover fees myself, I added before they asked. A calendar link pinged my inbox before the light changed. I booked the first slot like it might vanish. A rideshare pulled up and I jumped in. Downtown offices, I kept my bag close. A new message flashed from him with 2 words. Prove it. I watched it fade behind the route line. I turned off read receipts and faced forward. I opened the calendar and checked requirements. Passport copy, contract, pay stubs, entry records. The driver glanced back when I started scanning. The seatbelt clicked, louder than my breathing. I stacked PDFs into a folder labeled Solo. The lobby doors stuck and then gave way. Security reached for my ID without a greeting. Late visit, he watched the appointment email load. Conference room 3, he pointed with a bored shrug. Printers out back if you need it. A coordinator met me with a laptop already open. Fast track or standard, she asked without looking up. Fast track, I kept my hands steady on the table. She slid a digital form across the screen. Every answer must match payroll records exactly. I typed like the keyboard owed me speed. Dates, titles, duties trimmed to bullet bones. Upload proof, the portal prompted with a friendly tone. I fed the machine every clean page I had. Bar finished and flipped to payment with a chime. Card or transfer, the coordinator asked, finally watching me. Card, I tapped numbers slow to avoid mistakes. The processor spun long enough to rattle me. Approved appeared and loosened my shoulders by an inch. Receipt will hit your email in minutes. The elevator opened and my screen buzzed again. Send proof now, his name hovered like a dare. I screenshot the confirmation and paused over send. Not yet, I wanted the stamped retainer first. I dropped the phone face down and exhaled. The coordinator returned with a checklist and a pen. Biometric slot tomorrow morning, she said like weather. Can you make it? Her eyebrow lifted toward the clock. I will, I signed the retainer without breathing between lines. She nodded and flagged my file for rush review. I stepped into the hallway and the attorney appeared. Not his card guy, a different one with brisk shoes. Quick intake, he said, already moving toward a room. Any partner involved in your immigration plan? Not anymore, I answered, and his mouth pressed thin. He scrolled through my draft and stopped twice. Cut this line about marriage intention, he tapped. It invites suspicion you cannot manage yet. He deleted it while watching my face for flinch. I let it go because I wanted speed, not pride. The printer spat a schedule and a barcode. Bring this tomorrow and nothing else, he pointed. No jewelry that slows screening, he tossed a plastic bag. Shoes off fast, no delays, his orders clipped the air. I pocketed the barcode like a ticket with teeth. In the lobby, my phone buzzed nonstop. New messages stacked short and sharp. Have you started? Then another with a photo of our couch. I typed 3 words and attached the receipt. Started, independent, confirmed. Typing dots appeared, then died, then came back. Meet me now, arrived with a location ping near our street. I stared at the map until my pulse settled. Public place, I replied and kept walking toward the exit. I wanted witnesses if his temper snapped. I reached the corner and waited for the ride. Wind pushed hair into my mouth and I let it. A second ping hit with a different pin farther away. He was moving while testing my patience for chase. I chose a third spot and sent it back. He arrived first and stood by the door. Hands visible, face unreadable, posture ready for a fight. Prove it, he repeated before I reached him. I held the barcode up like a badge. Tomorrow morning, no ring, no favors. He checked the print and then my eyes. You're really doing this, he murmured with a twitch. I told you I would, my voice stayed clean of heat. Then one more condition, he said with a tight jaw. Freeze the joint account tonight. Done, I pulled up the banking app immediately. He watched my thumb hover over the toggle. You sure? I asked because I wanted him choosing. Do it, he said and swallowed whatever came next. The confirmation flashed and felt like cutting rope. Send me the freeze notice, he pressed without blinking. I forwarded the alert while the app still glowed. Anything else? I asked to end the standoff. He pocketed his phone like he wanted to crush it. Keep me updated but not about feelings. Updates only, I nodded once and stepped back. He reached out, then pulled his hand away fast. I held still until he looked up again. Tomorrow decides a lot, he whispered like a warning bell. I left before the silence swallowed both of us. The ride arrived and the driver unlocked the doors. I climbed in and turned the volume down. My inbox chimed with the appointment confirmation again. I forwarded that too, then archived our old thread. I watched the city slide by and planned the morning. The metal detector screamed as I stepped through. Back up, the guard's hand cut the air. I emptied my pockets fast and held them open. A stapled printout had set it off. I kept my eyes on his blank stare. Check-in scanned the code and frowned. Her fingers hovered over a note on the screen. Secondary review, she muttered while printing a slip. A door buzzed and swallowed the sound of the room. I followed the hallway wit. Without asking why. A plain desk waited with a camera on a pole. State your purpose, the officer said without blinking. Employment authorization route, I answered with steady breath. No spouse involved today, I kept my shoulders square. He tapped the keyboard like each key owed him. He slid a sheet halfway across the desk. Anonymous concern received last night, he read flat. Alleged intent to secure status through romance. My stomach flipped then settled back into place. Do you recognize this description? I recognize spite, I pushed my phone forward. Bank app showed the joint account on lock. Timestamp matched the late hour pin from yesterday. Here were charges I covered alone today. Here were confirmations purchased from my card. He compared times against the system clock. His gaze softened by a degree then reset. Fingerprints first, he said and pointed at the pad. Then a few clarifying items for the file. Heat gathered in my palms as glass met skin. The scanner pulsed and captured each ridge. He wiped the platen and rotated my hand. Eyes forward, he said as the camera whirred. I stared through the lens until it clicked. He printed a small sticker with a code. Who could have sent the tip, he asked. Someone close, I kept my tone clipped. Do you want to name them? His pen waited. No, I met his stare and didn't flinch. Note this instead, I proceed without their help. He wrote one line and closed the file. Status will update after processing, he said calm. He stood and opened the door with a beep. Collect your belongings at exit 10. My phone vibrated before I crossed the threshold. Outside the vestibule he leaned on a post. Hands visible, jaw tight, eyes searching my face. I'm here, he said softer than last night. He held out a sealed envelope with a stamp. Statement of non-petition, notarized this morning. I did not take it yet. What does it say exactly? I tapped the corner. That I'm not filing for you now, he swallowed hard. That we still live separate in immigration terms. That I support your independent path. I took a photo and sent it off. Attorney replied with a short line and a caution. Helpful if consistent, dangerous if weaponized later. I snapped the envelope shut and held it. I'll retain a copy and decide placement later. He rubbed his wrist and watched the foot traffic. You were flagged, he said after a tight pause. I studied his face until he looked away. I got a notice during intake, I answered clean. Someone tried to paint me as a schemer. His nostrils flared then dropped. I called a hotline last night, he admitted low. I asked how to report concerns but didn't finish. I hung up before they took details. You still got flagged and that's on me. On whoever finished it, I countered without blinking. Either way, I'm moving on the next steps. I opened my calendar and booked the medical slot. I copied him on logistics only with no extras. He watched the invites land like small blows. Can we talk tonight? He tried again. Only operations, I answered and kept my footing. You'll get milestones and nothing else. He nodded once then tucked his hands away. His lips pressed thin like he wanted to protest. I headed for the curb and texted HR. Biometrics done, secondary cleared, medical tomorrow. A reply pinged with a checklist and a line. Bring vaccination record or expect shots. I added a pharmacy run to the plan. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. A short voice confirmed the follow-up review slot. Random quality control, they called it with brisk tone. I marked it and tightened my backpack straps. Quality control sounded a lot like trust on trial. He stepped beside me but kept a full step back. I'll be outside during the medical, he offered quietly. In case you need a ride or anything. I won't, I answered and watched a bus pass. Show up anyway if you need to breathe. He blinked at that and nodded once. You'll send updates when they're official, he asked. Yes, only confirmations and appointments. No talk about rings or dates or fantasies. Only proof that cannot be twisted again. I crossed to the opposite corner and lifted a hand. A car pulled over and I reached for the handle. He called my name and I paused on reflex. I want to fix this, he said with raw honesty. Then stopped testing me like a suspect. Sleeve up, the nurse snapped a glove and tapped my arm. Vaccination record, her eyebrows lifted when I showed the blank. We draw titers and give boosters now. Cost goes higher without proof, she held the consent form. I signed before doubt could breathe. The needle bit and the vials lined up fast. Urine sample, vision check, chest image next. She handed me a questionnaire with blunt boxes. Relationship status, current address, contact for emergencies. I wrote the couch address and left his line empty. The doctor skimmed my answers with a quick frown. Address changed this week, he noted while clicking. Any partner tied to your case, his pen hovered. None, I said, and he moved on without comment. Results released directly to the agency if requested. At the payment desk, the clerk glanced at my card. Split tender or single charge, she asked with bored tone. Single, I authorized the swipe and watched the screen crawl. Approved landed after a long spin that burned seconds. A receipt printed with a tracking code I memorized. My phone vibrated with a block of alerts. Quality control advanced my review to next week. Location and time stamped in the middle of the day. I forwarded the notice to the attorney and HR. Then I added him with only the slot details. Outside the clinic, a man stepped into my path. Compliance follow-up 2 minutes, he said and flashed a badge. Are you under pressure to marry for benefits? No, I met his eyes until he blinked. Note my independent filings and today's medical. He studied my hands and checked a line in his notebook. Any shared finances active, his gaze stayed neutral. Frozen by agreement, I answered and kept still. Can you cover rent alone this cycle? Yes, I said even before I checked the balance. The door opened behind me and he appeared. No coffee, no excuses, just a careful distance. Is this part of the process? He asked under his breath. Compliance, the agent answered while pocketing the badge. Thank you both, we'll log contact and move on. We stood there like strangers on a platform. He broke first and held up his phone. Landlord messaged me for confirmation on the split. He wants one signature each by tonight. Send yours and I'll send mine. A bank alert punched the screen before I typed. Autopay canceled due to the freeze we triggered yesterday. Rent due in 3 hours with a penalty ticking. I moved funds from my individual account in one transfer. The number hurt but the receipt felt clean. Handled, I said and showed the confirmation. He looked at the amount and went quiet. I'll repay half when this settles, he muttered slowly. Repay nothing, I answered because debts muddy everything. Keep proof I covered a shared obligation alone. He nodded once and stared at his shoes. Interview next week, he said after a beat. I got the notice too through a mailing error. Delete it, I told him without softening the words. No attachments, no surprise paperwork, no stage appearances. My phone buzzed again with a new clinic ping. Chest image requires a follow-up view today. I booked the earliest return slot while we stood there. Small anomaly, likely technique, the message tried to soothe. I didn't trust soothing when stakes hung this high. I'm driving, he offered and held out his keys. No, I stepped toward the curb and raised my hand. Text me when you arrive there, he tried again. Updates only, I said, and a car pulled in. He took a step back like the asphalt burned. At the radiology desk, I signed the add-on form. Deep breath, hold until I say, the tech instructed. The plate pressed hard and the machine hummed. I counted heartbeats and fixed on a scuff mark. Good, she said, doctor will review within the hour. While waiting, I opened a new message draft. Subject line, read case file clean and moving. Attach receipts, attach appointment cards, attach the tracking code. I hovered over send and thought about the badge. Trust doesn't survive shadows, proof does. The doctor returned with a clipped nod. Repeat looks fine, no further imaging required. Report uploads to your packet tonight. I thanked her and walked straight outside. A storm of messages waited, but none changed the path. I sent the update to everyone on the thread. No emojis, no extra lines, only facts with timestamps. He texted last with 5 words that landed heavy. Tell me how to help. I let the screen go dark and kept walking. I woke to a voicemail demanding documents by noon. Quality control moved the interview to today, not next week. Location changed to a federal site across the river. I booked a car and packed the packet fast. The clock turned every second into a shove. At the curb, my screen lit with a new message. Bring proof of financial separation, the officer wrote curtly. I opened banking and downloaded the freeze notice. Then I printed the rent receipt at the hotel desk. None of this left room for excuses. Outside the building, he waited with a manila envelope. Don't approach the door with me, I warned quietly. I brought notarized statements for your file. His shoulders stayed high. Leave them with security, I answered without slowing. He stepped aside but didn't leave. Security scanned my appointment and waved me through. The waiting area hummed with low voices and restless shoes. My number flashed and a clerk requested the packet. She flipped through pages like dealing cards. Sit 10 minutes, she said, and vanished behind a door. 10 minutes stretched into 30 and then 40. A woman in a gray suit appeared without a smile. Room 4, she called, and I followed the gesture. A recorder sat already running on the table. 2 chairs, 1 notepad, no small talk. State your current living arrangement, she began briskly. Separate logistics for now, I answered with calm. Explain why joint funds are frozen, the pen hovered. Mutual risk control after disagreement, I kept my gaze steady. We pay obligations independently while this proceeds. She studied me like a puzzle missing pieces. An anonymous allegation exists on your case, she said. We need context for intent today. I intend to work without shortcuts, I replied plainly. Marriage will not be presented during this process. She slid a printout across the table. A screenshot of a post on a neighborhood forum. Foreigners chase rings, the caption read with smirking emojis. Photos blurred, but our building's entrance was clear. Do you recognize anything here? Only the door, I answered and braced. She tapped another sheet with a timestamp and IP range. It traces near your address block, she continued flat. I breathed once and passed her the notarized statement. Add this to the record for clarity. Her pen scratched one concise note. Describe any recent conflict tied to this process. Dispute over timing and trust, I said and stopped. No police involvement, no domestic issues. We implemented boundaries and continued separately. A knock interrupted and a guard leaned in. Drop-in visitor requests to submit supplemental evidence. Name, she asked without looking up. He said his first no. Me through the crack. My spine tightened, but I held my seat. Declined, she told the guard without lifting her pen. Third-party items must be scheduled in advance. The door closed and she watched my face. You brought him here, she observed, not asked. He came uninvited, I answered and let it hang. She clicked the recorder off for a beat. When we restart, answer each prompt directly. No extra detail, no speculation, she instructed firmly. I nodded and placed my palms flat. The recorder clicked back on like a gun cock. Have you promised marriage tied to immigration outcomes? No, I answered clean and fast. Have you applied for benefits based on a relationship? No, straight into the microphone without tremor. Are you aware of any fraud plan? No, I said again with the same cadence. Do you consent to unscheduled verifications during adjudication? Yes, I said because I wanted this over. She stopped the recording and sat back. Interview complete, await correspondence. Outside, he waited under a no-standing sign. You tried to submit evidence, I said without slowing. I wanted them to have the truth, his hands lifted. You created a scene instead, I replied and kept moving. Don't insert yourself into my file again. He followed at a careful distance toward the corner. I found the online post last night, he said quickly. I flagged it and wrote to the moderator. He showed a reply declining removal without a court order. I took a photo and logged it for later. My phone buzzed with the attorney's short message. Do not let partner engage with officers on site. Risk of narrative contamination, the second line read. I held the screen where he could see it. He flinched like the word contamination cut deep. A scooter clipped his bag and broke the moment. He grabbed the strap and steadied himself with a snarl. Let me make this right, he pushed out. Then step back and follow instructions, I answered. Start by sending me nothing unsolicited. We moved toward the taxi stand in uneasy sync. A driver waved and I opened the rear door. I'll pay for your next appointment ride, he offered low. No, I said and paused on the sill. Purchase nothing for me unless asked. He nodded once and shoved his hands into pockets. I booked therapy after your text yesterday. His voice landed flat but honest. Weekly for 12 weeks, he added with a wince. Not for you, for my sanity. Good, I said because it was. Share insights if they change your behavior. Keep the rest to yourself, I added evenly. His jaw loosened and he took one step back. I closed the door and tapped the headrest. In the car, I opened a fresh email. Subject line read third-party interference risk. I documented the attempted submission and the forum smear. Attach screenshots, attach timestamps, attach the location pin. Then I CC'd the agency inbox listed on the notice. At a red light, my phone rang with HR. Compliance requested confirmation of your role duties, the manager said. Send a bullet list by 2. I'll send it in 30 minutes, I replied. Deadlines felt like handles I could grip. I pulled into a coffee shop for Wi-Fi. Laptop open, cursor blinking like a metronome. I trimmed responsibilities to crisp verbs and measurable outcomes. I sent the list and added supporting evaluations. Then I logged the out-of-office window for adjudication dates. A text arrived from an unknown number again. Quality control home visit possible within 72 hours. Reply not required, but I replied anyway. Access granted during posted hours only. I sent the address where the couch waited. The door chimed and he walked in slowly. He kept a respectful distance from my table. I'm not sitting, he said quickly with palms up. I need to hand you something signed. He slid a sealed document across the surface. Open it here, I told him without gentleness. He broke the seal and held it toward me. Affidavit stating I won't file petitions on your behalf. Also stating I will not obstruct your application. Notarized copy for your counsel. I read each line and checked the dates. It matched what the attorney advised yesterday. Email the PDF directly to my counsel, I said. Subject line exactly as follows, I dictated the words. He typed as I watched in silence. A group at the next table grew louder. One pointed at my folder and smirked. Paper bride, he joked to his friend. I turned my head and looked straight through him. He dropped his gaze when I didn't blink. You don't have to take that, he muttered tense. I'm not taking it, I answered without moving. I'm recording it in my spine for later. He exhaled like he had been punched. Do you want me to say something? Don't escalate noise, I said with steel. Your defense makes me look dependent in public. He nodded and pressed his lips into a line. We both let the chatter fade in. To a blur. Silence sometimes wins where shouting loses. My phone buzzed again with an official header. Your case advanced to adjudication queue, the email read. Estimated review in 3 to 5 weeks. Request for further evidence possible during that window. I forwarded it to the same minimalist list. He leaned toward the screen but stopped himself. What happens now? He asked in a rough whisper. I work, I wait, I keep receipts, I replied. You manage your fear without dragging me. His eyes closed like that hurt in a clean way. I gathered the folder and zipped it shut. I'm heading to the landlord for the signatures, I said. You can meet me there if you can behave. I can, he answered, voice steady for once. Good, then walk beside me without touching. We signed in separate lines under a stern glance. The landlord stamped both pages and slid copies across. Any cohabitation changes must be reported within a week. Understood, I said and picked up my copy. He tucked his into his jacket like it burned. Outside, his phone rang with a familiar tone. He looked at the screen and didn't answer. It's the lawyer from before, he muttered small. He wants a meeting about my prior case. Take it away from me, I said and turned. He stepped aside and answered with clipped words. I watched his shoulders shift as he listened. Short phrases, a nod, a stiff goodbye. He returned with a different set of eyes. They want a statement about my tip. You'll give them the timeline and the retraction, I said. You'll also confirm you witnessed my independent filings. No opinions, only what you saw. He swallowed and nodded twice like a promise. I believed him for exactly one breath. We reached the corner where we first fought. He glanced at the spot and then at me. Do you still want marriage someday? He asked softly. Not until you trust me without conditions, I answered. Maybe not ever if this keeps repeating. His mouth opened and closed with no sound. He backed up one step and then another. I'm trying to unlearn panic, he managed finally. Then do it without making me your lesson. He looked like he might argue, then didn't. My phone lit with a fresh notice from compliance. Home check scheduled for tonight between 6 and 8. I typed back confirmation in the buzzer code. Then I sent him one line with a task. Be there to unlock and then leave. He stared at the message until it sank in. Unlock and leave, he repeated with a small nod. No questions, no commentary, no sudden proofs. Exactly, I said and started walking toward evening. He matched my pace for 3 steps, then fell behind. At 5:59, I stood by the door. He arrived at 6 sharp with his keys ready. He opened, stepped back, and raised both hands. 2 officers entered with clipboards and calm faces. I met their gaze and braced for the next demand. Start with identification, the taller officer lifted a clipboard. I placed my passport on the counter and stepped back. Any other occupants tonight? The other one asked flatly. None, I answered, and my pulse counted seconds. They looked past me like the walls could talk. Show sleeping area, I led them down the short hall. Drawers closed, surfaces clear, nothing extra on display. Where do you keep important files? The question landed hard. In here, I said and unlocked the cabinet. Keys jangled once like a warning bell. They photographed labels and checked dates. Who controls access to these documents? The shorter one watched me. Only me, I answered, aware of every breath. Any shared storage with a partner? The pen hovered again. No, segregated while this proceeds. We moved to the kitchen and back. Open that, the taller one nodded at a sealed box. Inside were receipts numbered and clipped. He lifted 3 and matched totals to statements. You track well, he said without warmth. My phone buzzed on the table. I silenced it without checking the screen. Expect more visits without notice, the shorter one added. Respond quickly and you'll be fine. Fine sounded like a dare I needed to meet. Work schedule this week, the taller officer glanced at his watch. I showed the calendar blocks and the interview slot. He compared times to today's log with care. Availability verified, he said, closing the folder. We're done for tonight if nothing changes. A knock hit the door before they left. He stood outside with his hands visible. Keys back to you, he said through the crack. I glanced at the officers and unlatched it. Leave them, I told him and stepped aside. He set the ring of metal on the shelf. I will wait downstairs, he added with restraint. Don't wait, I told him without raising my voice. His jaw flexed and then eased by degrees. He nodded once and backed into the hallway. The officers exchanged a look and packed up. Notify us if interference happens, the shorter one said. They exited without another glance at me. The latch clicked and quiet filled the unit. My phone lit again with 3 new alerts. The attorney had emailed with a red banner. Agency flagged unsolicited contact from partner today. Confirm boundaries in writing within 24 hours. I typed a 1-paragraph statement and attached logs. I pressed send and watched the wheel spin. Another message appeared from compliance at the top. Upload video of tonight's walkthrough, the request read. They added a secure link and a deadline. I uploaded the footage from the door camera. Progress bar crawled like it needed caffeine. A text arrived from an unknown profile. Remove your case from our building forum. Threatening tone, no signature, no context. I screenshotted and forwarded it to the investigator. Then I blocked the number without ceremony. The buzzer sounded again and I froze. Delivery, a voice called through the speaker. I cracked the door and accepted a flat envelope. Return address matched the federal office across the river. Adrenaline spiked and steadied while I checked the seal. Inside was a request for additional proof. Employment duties letter, updated pay history, lease confirmation. Deadline in 10 business days with consequences spelled out. I pulled the laptop closer and drafted the list. This asked for work, not panic. I called HR and the line picked up fast. I need a signed duties document tonight if possible. I'll format and route for signature, the manager answered. Check your inbox in an hour. He hung up and I exhaled once. I pinged the landlord with a straightforward request. Issue a letter confirming current occupancy arrangements. He replied with a gruff yes and a timer. Pick up at 9 tomorrow, his reply read. I marked the slot and locked it down. A message popped from him with a single line. I am downstairs if anything escalates. I typed back 3 words and stopped midway. I erased them and wrote one sentence only. No contact until documents are filed. Dots appeared, dots vanished, nothing else arrived. Silence felt like the first clean decision all week. I opened a new folder and labeled it evidence. Each file received a number and a short description. Order meant I could fight without wasting energy. The camera alert chimed again at the door. Neighbor stood outside with a phone in hand. Hey, she called, voice low and fast. Someone posted your address on the forum. She held up the screen like a flare. Show me, I said, stepping into the frame. The post included my initials and unit number. A comment thread stacked with ugly guesses. Thanks for telling me, I said and took photos. I'm reporting this and locking down access. She nodded and squeezed my shoulder once. Want me to stay until you finish uploads? I'm covered, I told her with a steady tone. Log it with the moderator anyways, I added. She left with a quick nod and a tight mouth. I forwarded everything to the investigator and counsel. Subject line read doxing tied to case. Attachments carried timestamps and platform details. Within minutes, the investigator replied with a ticket number. They promised escalation and monitoring tonight. A calendar alert blinked on the screen. Duty letter arrived with a digital signature. 2 sentences captured scope and metrics precisely. I downloaded it and added the hash to notes. Checklist shrank like a knot finally loosening. Another ping came from the federal portal. Upload materials within the next hour for expedited review. I took the hint and opened the link. Files slid into place and confirmed with green checks. I hit submit and stared at the confirma. Dion. My phone rang with his name flashing. I let it ring once and hit decline. A text followed with a photo of our hallway. Someone ripped the unit number off the door. I texted back 2 words that carried rules. Document it, he sent a second photo immediately. It showed fresh screws and a missing plate. I forwarded both images to the investigator again. Then I booked a building maintenance request for morning. Damage control became part of the rhythm. Another email landed with the subject adjudication update. I hesitated before opening it and then tapped. Preliminary approval pending background checks, the message read. Final notice to follow within days. I leaned against the wall and let it settle. A second email arrived right behind the first. From the officer in the gray suit earlier. Your cooperation during home verification was noted. Be advised that third-party influence will hinder outcomes. I typed a short acknowledgement and hit send. My phone buzzed again with his number stubborn. I answered on speaker and kept my tone even. I know about the update, he blurted quickly. It hit my old forwarding email by mistake. Delete it, I said and drew a line. I will, he said, softer than I expected. I also filed a retraction regarding the anonymous tip. He paused and swallowed hard before continuing. I requested my earlier inquiries be removed from consideration. You created a stain and now want credit for bleach. I deserve none, he replied without defense. I'm informing you because accountability matters. Keep your accountability away from my case, I answered. Send proof of the retraction to counsel only. He whispered a quiet okay and cut the call. The portal chimed with an automated receipt. Submission accepted, review continuing, queue position updated. I took a picture of the screen for records. Then I powered the laptop down and stood up. Motion kept me from spiraling into useless loops. A knock sounded once, careful and light. Building security, a voice announced through the door. I checked the camera and opened with the chain on. Report received about the forum post, the guard said. We've notified the property manager and filed an incident. Add the missing plate to that report, I responded. He noted the time and the observed damage. Do you want escort for the next days? I'll manage, I said and closed the gap slowly. The chain slid back with a final rasp. I poured water and took 2 steady breaths. A new email dropped into my inbox immediately. Sender read United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Subject line read card production ordered. I stared until the letters stopped blurring. I forwarded the notice to counsel and HR. Then I typed one last message to him. Outcome reached, no further updates will follow. I set the phone down and watched it vibrate. He called 3 times and then stopped. The buzzer rang again and again. I ignored it until a text arrived. I'm leaving the spare keys with security tonight. Collect them when you want, the message read. I responded with a final boundary that felt right. Drop them off and do not linger. I watched the lobby camera as he complied. He placed the envelope on the desk and walked out. No dramatic turn, no pleading words, just distance. The guard waved at the lens and logged the handoff. I locked the door and checked each window once. Then I placed the ring box on the counter. Not an invitation, not a threat, just placement. My phone buzzed with a last short text. Congratulations, he wrote, and the screen went still. I stood there under the pressure of quiet. Relief showed up like a bruise touched too soon. My hands found the keys and held them tightly. Tomorrow I would move the rest of my things. Tonight I watched the door and chose my next life.